Welcome back, viewers. Dave Epstein here from the Post-Pollock firm, here to follow up on the video I did last time on ICE. Two of the things that I was curious about, what sort of training ICE is getting, and also what are their powers as far as entering premises. What do they need a warrant? What do they need? Let's start with the training. Now, as I understand it, they are supposed to be trained like any other federal law enforcement officer. And that usually involves 16 weeks, I believe, of training. However, in some instances, because they were trying to flood, I guess they were trying to flood the world with ICE agents, so they were actively recruiting them, they cut that training down. It was cut down to 42 to 48 days. They cut over 100 hours of hands-on instructions, including firearms fitness and critically Spanish language and proficiency, given that they're going after Spanish people in many of these raids or many of their activities. It helps that they're somewhat proficient in Spanish, that they can give basic phrases. So they cut that out. And then there was a whistleblower, I believe from Homeland Security or ICE, who testified before Congress that they had substantially cut it. I'll show you a video of this whistleblower and you can see it. And this was around the time that there were issues going on in Minneapolis. Let's take a look at this video.
They ceased all of the legal instructions regarding use of force. This means that cadets are not taught what it means to be objectively reasonable, the very standard which the law requires them to meet when deciding whether or not to use deadly force.
And that's Ryan Schwenk there, who says ICE cut the length of its training program by nearly half. He says that meant many recruits didn't even understand the basics before they hit the streets with a gun and a badge.
Even in the final days of training, the cadets cannot demonstrate a solid grasp of the tactics or the law required to perform their jobs. It's shocking that anyone would think this is safe or responsible.
And in a statement, DHS denied that it's taking shortcuts in training, saying in part, quote, despite false claims from the media and sanctuary politicians, no training hours have been cut. Our officers receive extensive firearm training, are taught de-escalation tactics, and receive Fourth and Fifth Amendment comprehensive instruction. And DHS noted also that new agents get on-the-job training as well, which it tracks and monitors.
Okay, folks, well, the last video we did where they said they get on-the-job training and they have Fourth and Fifth Amendment training, and didn't look like the people we saw were getting terribly good training, and certainly not in dealing with the public. The use of force issue has come up repeatedly. Now, Homeland Security denied that there were any shortcuts. With all due respect, Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, who was unceremoniously discharged only days ago, gave a lot of denials in response to these shootings of civilians, deadly shootings that proved to be completely false. And what they were doing is just coming out with these statements, or she was, that were not accurate. It reflected that they hadn't actually looked at what happened and formulated an opinion based upon what was seen. Some of these videos do suggest, now again, these are some snippets, but this has been ongoing, a lack of training in those areas that are important, namely use of force, dealing with the public, proper training with firearms, proper training with any weapons, tasing. These guys have their tasers out. Many videos I've seen, they're already, as soon as somebody even turns around or whatever, they're ready to tase them. And you don't use that unless you absolutely have to. If you have to use reasonable force, you do. Most police officers will hold off on tasing, especially if they outnumber the suspect. But these guys will gang tackle, some will gang tackle a person, and then there's somebody there hitting them with the taser, which is also dangerous because you could also hit one of your fellow officers, which happens. With that said, the training, Homeland Security claims it's all there, it's the full amount of training. There is evidence that it is not the full training with some of the recruits. They were trying to get a monumental force out there. If you look at some of the videos with these roving bands of 20, 25, 30 ICE agents walking through different parts of cities. They wanted to flood the streets and they didn't have enough agents. So they recruited them and they wanted to start doing this fast. I tend to believe the whistleblower and others are saying these people are not receiving training. And some of those videos suggest that some of them are not. Now, the other question I wanted to answer and talk about in more detail was the issue of a judicial warrant versus an administrative warrant. And when can ICE enter a home, a business, etc. And there's a key distinction as to where they plan to enter. They don't need a judicial warrant to make an arrest, provided that they have a reason to make the arrest that they see. They stop somebody in a raid or something and they do not have information, they don't have their papers, they don't need to call a judge to get a warrant. However, to enter premises, to raid a place in the public areas of a place, namely a private business or the public areas of a home, I guess just the yard. I don't know about the backyard, because if you have to walk around and go behind, that might create a more private place. They need a judicial warrant signed by a judge to go inside a home, inside the private areas of a business, outside of the home, outside in the public, in public places, public parts of a business. Say you want to raid a restaurant. You can go in where the public can go in. You can't just run back into the offices or the kitchens. There you need a judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is sufficient for public areas. It's a warrant signed by an ICE supervisor, and there are lots of them. So they can get a warrant, and I understand they're being freely granted by the supervisors at ICE to go in any non-public area and start doing whatever they're doing, questioning, etc. A business or a business owner can rightly demand a warrant for people to enter, a judicial warrant to enter private areas, and the business is not required necessarily to cooperate other than to say allow them in if they have a valid warrant. Now, the difference between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant is significant. A judicial warrant is when you go before a judge and you have to show probable cause to that judge. That means probable cause that a crime's been committed. The administrative or is being committed or may be committed, or basically that there is an illegal alien in the case of ICE, or they have good reason, probable cause to believe there is one or more, there are illegal aliens in a particular location. And they have to base that up with facts, and those facts have to be sworn to by somebody, a supervisor, an agent, etc. Here's the big problem, though. With the warrants that they've been executing, they're going in on the judicial warrants, and it's not clear to me whether or not they actually have any reason to believe a particular person or place is holding illegal aliens. The accusation is out there that they just, there's a lot of Spanish-speaking people here. There's a lot of people with Spanish accents here. You know, you saw that video of the ICE agent getting yelled at by the judge, but he said he didn't speak the language. He was talking about a Native American man, an indigenous man, who did speak the language, but they hear an accent. They say, the alarms go off. You can't just base your law enforcement on that, although they seem to be allowed to. And I'm not sure what is going into these administrative warrants. I don't know what Congress is doing or the extent to which Congress is delving into that. Because, yes, again, if the administration wants to enforce the law, the immigration laws, and round up people that are illegal, go ahead and do it. But do it lawfully, do it reasonably. Of course, don't hurt or involve citizens. And when you go after somebody you think is an illegal, make sure you vet that carefully, because it looks to me like the roundups sometimes are a little random. So, with that said, we have some issue as to whether full training has been given to these ICE agents, or I don't know if the supervisors were there to begin with. And then there's the question of when they can enter a home, etc. If they come into your home, they need a judicial warrant. That means a judge has to have gotten information, sworn to usually, that suggests that there is an illegal in there or illegal activity that involves, somehow touches upon immigration. Now, just like there are different people in ICE, there are plenty of instances where you see ICE agents, being very kind to people, very considerate. I don't want to be just bashing these guys. I mean, there are some people, they have a job. We have always had immigration enforcement in this country, have had it for a long time. But there are a lot of others where you see this very disturbing situation. But the question is, what judge do you get? There are a lot of different judges, just like there are ICE agents. Whenever a judge lambastes an ICE agent, nowadays he or she is accused of being an activist judge. There are also very conservative judges, people appointed by the current president and other Republicans, and they're conservative and more pro-law enforcement. So you could get a different response to the same same set of facts from different judges. Not too often, because the judges, I like to think, are professionally trained. They're experienced, both lawyers and judges. They go through training too. Lawyers become judges, but they have to go through training too. So you can't, but still, you can get somebody who leans in one way or another in favor of or against issuing a warrant. So there are a lot of facts out there. If you're a business and ICE shows up, you certainly can't interfere with what they're doing. If they have an administrative warrant, you can object to them coming into private areas of your business without a judicial warrant. But once they do, if they have a judicial warrant, you have to allow them in. The other thing is, if you're an employee, say you're somebody who is of questionable legality in this country, you're not required to answer questions. You still can take the fifth, so to speak, but you can't flee either. If you flee, that can be a separate charge of, I believe it's obstructing justice in the federal context, but you can't flee. You're not required to incriminate yourself, but sooner or later, if you can't show documentation and they have you there and you don't have proper papers, or worse, you have papers that are falsified, they don't need to do much more. They don't need you to say anything. Still better, as I say in every legal context, better to keep your mouth shut until you talk to a lawyer if you're not sure of what you're supposed to do, what your rights are. So that's the little I've learned about ICE. I think that it's been toned down a bit. I don't know where it's going from here, but I think the events leading up to the firing of Kristi Noem caused everybody to stop and step back and take a look. I don't know where it's going to go with the new Homeland Security Administrator. I have no idea, but please, I hope people heed their rights and learn what they can and can't do, including those who want to protest against this crackdown. Just know you have rights too. I hope you learned something from this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit like and subscribe, and please leave your comments. Always love to read them. Thanks. This is Dave Epstein signing off for the Post Pollock channel. See you next time. Bye-bye.